have to be open to putting your art kind of in different wrappers or containers. And I also don't think there's really anything wrong with being an artist who doesn't make a full-time income. I don't think it makes you less of an artist. I grew up with a father that had a very strong temper, violent temper. And so I think I carried a lot of that into my adulthood. I need to make $200,000 a year, or I have to make some amount of money to be happy. I just don't think that's it. What's more important is, do you have room for art in your life? Because I think things are tough and hard, but I think there is hope.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Biz Student Podcast, where I show you that fulfilling your dreams doesn't have to come at a cost of financial insecurity. And today I'm here with Jason McBride, who I've met over a year ago when I first started writing online, on a platform called Medium. And I started reading his essays. They're great. Maybe, Jason, do you want to tell everyone what you do?
Sure. These days, I call myself a poet-cartoonist. My primary creative expression is I make poetry comics, mostly haiku comics, and I write a lot of essays. I also am a freelance copywriter and content writer. And so between those two, I pay my bills without any kind of a real job.
What some people may not suspect is that, you were a lawyer before this. You disbanded your law firm 13 years ago now. So it's quite a long time, and you've been writing more so than you were a lawyer, which I think you were for 9 years. That was quite a shock to me at first when I first read one of your stories about that. Was there a specific moment that made you quit that part of your life?
It's hard to say there was a specific moment. There were lots of small and medium and big things. I mean, just generally, I was really miserable. Just felt locked into a life. I was doing things I didn't really enjoy. A lot of stress, a lot of stress. But like one thing that happened, for example, I was going to go we had a vacation with my family. We were going to go down to California, visit some family, go to Disneyland, stuff like that. So I was in court, months before that, but we had planned it out a ways, and we were setting the trial date for this client that I represented, and told the judge, "Oh, well, I'm not going to be available that week. I'll be out of town," which is usually fine. But the judge didn't like that in this case. Like, "Oh, well, sorry, we'd have to do it now or put it out too far, so you'll have to change your vacation plans." Irritated me is not even strong enough, really. But I'm like, this is ridiculous. I felt like I was bound by somebody else. And so in that particular case, like, my family all went without me, and then I joined them later on because the trial was in the first couple of days. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Why I shouldn't have this kind of a life. And little things like that. Another time I was on a vacation again with my family, and my office got a call from a judge who was not happy with one of my clients because they had been convicted of drunk driving, of DUI, and they showed up they had to serve 3 days in jail or something like that. Well, they showed up drunk to the jail, which is not good. The judge was very unhappy, and so scheduled an emergency hearing the next day, which of course there was no way I was going to make. And this is before Zoom was a big thing, so maybe some of this could have been ameliorated. But I actually had a call, one of my colleagues, like, "Hey, you got to cover this thing for me." But it was one of those things that, like, I'm trying to take a vacation. There shouldn't be this much stress. So those kind of things, on top of just the general, I just felt like I just wasn't happy.
I get what you mean, because I know it's not on the same level, but when I was doing my leaving cert, so that would be like the SATs in America, I just was locked in my room the whole day because I put on myself that I have to get this in this grade, and I was bound by that grade, so I didn't have much time, and I regretted that. Like, I didn't spend that much time with my family, so I completely get what you mean. And kind of when you left, did you see any immediate change in yourself with the way you thought about the world, or how you interacted with other people? And then maybe, was there any changes that in the people that were close to you? Was there any negative reactions, positive reactions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, back when I was attorney, I mean, basically I would throw up every day before going to work. Once I left the firm and wrapped that part of my life up, I mean that stopped happening. I slept better. So I mean, almost immediately there were changes like that, and like over time, I was more patient with my children. I had four relatively young children at the time. It was easier for me to be patient. I think I was more curious about the world. I had more energy to just be curious. There was definitely a lot of negative feedback in terms of like particularly my in-laws did not love that choice. Uh, Still don't, but we're here.
And now, how did you handle that? Because I know for myself that I want to pursue like art and poetry full time, and there is still a lot of negative feedback on like it's quite delusional that there's like a very low probability of it working out. Maybe you didn't handle it completely well or something that it still impacts you, maybe. But is there any kind of tip you have for kind of dealing with that feedback from people that are close to you? Because I feel like it matters less if it's strangers.
Sure, I probably does matter less if it's strangers. I think part of it is you have to really come to accept um, that you are the way that you are, and you have to really live your life for you and not for other people. And so some people just are never going to accept it, and you have to learn, I think, at some point to be just okay with that. And part of it is, I think, guarding. I don't think necessarily everybody needs to know that, but that's your goal. I do think that some people are not going to understand especially when I first quit the firm. I really wasn't thinking I was going to be a full time artist. I was really like, I'm going to do marketing. I was really good at marketing. I was really good at specifically law firm marketing. And so in my mind, kind of like, I mean, I wasn't, when I had the firm, it was my firm. So I wasn't working for somebody else. Now I'm just like, well, I'm doing the same type of real job, right? I'm doing marketing, but for myself. But like, a lot of people close to me in terms of family and friends never fully understood what I did. And maybe I just wasn't good at explaining it, or I don't know. And so, I think part of it is I could have been clearer about what I was doing. But on the other hand, I feel like there's a certain segment of them that never, no matter what, we're just never gonna be okay with it. And then as I've transitioned over the years, so I make more of my income from my art than from client work stuff now. Although the client work is still pretty important. Their attitude hasn't changed at all. And so I'm like, yeah, well, I just have to be okay with making sure that I'm happy and that I am being good to my people. Like, I want to be a good father and things like that.
It's quite hard when the people don't accept it, and I'm still at a young enough age that it takes a while for me to accept that. And I guess it does come easier with time because you're at the age of my parents, so like pretty much the exact same year that they're born, and that's really sobering to hear that maybe well they come from a different country, Poland, so it's a bit different socially, economically than America. So of course they're not going to have the same life perspective as you do. So that's kind of a sobering thought that, I have these circumstances. It's not that I don't think they're rational, that, like, yeah, of course, there's a low likelihood of this working out. And
Sure.
art, like in people's heads, has been defined as, oh, paintings or some visual. And not a lot of the time it's defined as words in a way, like maybe not poetry sometimes in today's day and age. Um, but do you think there's any way for us poets to make poetry more accessible to everyone? Because I think that a lot of children specifically will have a bad memory of poetry in school because it'll be just very rigorous analysis that it makes the poetry dead, and then it's also poetry that was written 100 years ago, so maybe it's not the best thing to start off with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. That's one of my big passions is trying to make poetry more accessible because I think poetry is I think it's like music. It's like an essential human thing. And I feel like, especially just in the West, our education system is really geared towards grinding anybody's love for poetry into dust. I agree. Like, I if you have any interest in poetry at all, start with reading modern poets. You can get to Shakespeare or even Keats later on, but just write with people who are writing now about the stuff that you know, because that's what's going to be interesting and that's what's going to be easiest to understand. And I think that we put poetry on too much of a pedestal sometimes in our popular culture. Like, you got to be some old guy like me, like in a tweed jacket and be serious all the time. And I think poetry can be funny. I think poetry, I mean, I have a whole series of haiku books that are, I guess, essentially kind of like gimmick haiku in some way. I have a book of pirate haiku, a book of horror haiku. I did a book of sci-fi haiku this year. And to me, the reason I'm interested in that, oh, there it is, yeah. And I'm interested in those things. I mean, genuinely interested. But to me, it was interesting to tell stories in poetry in a way that maybe is just more familiar to people and more interesting. And yeah, I really, and that's another reason I'm really passionate about haiku, because I feel like that's something everybody, especially in the English speaking world, has some idea of. Oh yeah, I remember 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, and it's really not hard to put together a poem like that. It's simple, but there's infinite combinations, and I'm obsessed with it. I think there's lots of things you can do to get more interesting and deeper with it. But the reason that's my primary poetic form, not exclusive, but my primary one, is I really want to give people a chance to go, oh, that's a poem that was just fun, or that was interesting, or that's something that I could do, because I think the world's a better place if we have more people that read poetry and more people that write poetry.
Yeah, and related to that, do you think everyone should make art, or do you think it's possible for everyone to make art? Maybe not in that specific sense that everyone thinks about art, of the visual stuff, the poetry, the music, but kind of a broader definition of making something. Do you think everyone should do that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great joys of humanity, is making art, crafts in some way. I mean, everything from like crochet. I don't think there's a distinction between arts and crafts, at least in my mind. Crocheting is art. Um, you know, all that type of thing. Woodworking. To me, that's all art, and not everybody has to be an artist, and that's fine. And probably the world works better with not everybody is an artist. But I think everybody should make art. It's a great human thing just for yourself. Like, I think that there was a time, like, back to poetry again, there was a time that it was pretty common, people writing letters to each other, right? Might put a little verse that they had written because it reminded them of this person, whether it was their mother, their father, their lover, whatever. And I mean, I think that'd be cool. I think we should get back to, you're texting your mates or whatever and be like, oh yeah, here's a little limerick or whatever. I don't think we need to take it that serious.
Yeah, like it'd be quite a stretch to say, but sending videos from social media, well, it wouldn't be art per se, but it's that kind of serves the same purpose in a way. And I think that so many times people, because of that narrow definition that people have in their mind of art, they can't like get that creative energy out, because they think that, oh, if I'm in, let's say, I don't know, marketing, it is a very much a creative industry, but sometimes they wouldn't think, oh, this is art, but that is also very much art. I remember you writing an article about marketing with a soul of a poet, and that really struck me, because it was like, yes, finally someone understands that I don't want to be convinced to buy something by marketing. I want to kind of express my love for something by seeing like a piece of marketing geared towards me, or one that expands my way of thinking. Could you kind of speak more about that?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally the goal of marketing isn't really to convince anybody of anything in a weird kind of way. Like, I like the phrase I use a lot is, you should. I don't know if this is an Americanism, it very much might be, but you should preach to the choir, and which really means that it's a criticism usually, right? They're saying, oh, you're just preaching to the choir, meaning you're only talking to people that already believe you. But if you're trying to sell stuff, it's much easier to give people who already want that just another reason to do that than to convince somebody who's skeptical of that. And so when I talk about marketing with the soul of a poet, I really think that marketing should be about human connection. I'm not trying to trick anybody into doing anything. And so I'm in this weird place, right? So part of my job as an artist, I've got to sell my stuff. I have to try and sell my books, sell my newsletter. And I don't want to trick anybody into doing that because then they're not going to be happy because that's just not going to be a good fit. And so what I want to do is try and connect with people who already have some kind of interest. Like they hear the idea of science fiction haiku, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Or they hear of haiku comics, I'm like, oh, that could be interesting. So I want to aim my marketing at cutting through the noise so people who were already interested in that idea now have an extra reason to check my stuff out. And I think it's the same way with whatever marketing you're doing. So like my day job, if you want, whatever, my copywriting and content writing, primarily I work with attorneys. I have a lot of experience there, so it's a really easy fit for me. But the same thing is I'm not trying on behalf of the law firms I work for. I don't want to. I work like a lot of business firms, and so I help them write content that's going to reach people who were already looking for a business attorney, and they can see why. Oh, this attorney is going to be a good fit for me. This firm is a good fit for me, and so yeah, I think marketing is abused a lot. AI, I think, is making it a lot worse. But if we can really get back to, the soul of a poet, like to me, my job as a poet, when I have my little poet hat on here, is to try and understand what being human is all about.
That's like very much a skill that once you lean into writing poetry and you notice those things that make you human, it's just a lot easier to connect with people, to kind of notice that, like in a conversation, that, oh, this person finds this interesting, I should probably talk to them more about it so they feel more connected to me. And then that kind of leans into the humanness, and relate that is AI, and you mentioned it. Are you scared of AI at the moment, or if you're not, like in relation to artists and I guess jobs in general, would you be able to give me a pitch on why you're not afraid of it and why you think that it'd be a great time to be an artist right now?
Sure. Yeah, I'm disgusted by AI. I think more than afraid of it. I think it's going to have I think it already is having some very ill effects on our society. I don't think ultimately it can replace artists. I don't think ultimately it can replace writers specifically in a lot of ways. I can talk to that in a moment. But I think it's really, right now is a great time to be an artist just because there are so many outlets to get people to see your work. And that's all I think any of us really want, right? Is to feel like we're heard or seen. And so, whether it's Substack or like, on Medium or YouTube, TikTok, there's just so many ways to connect with people. I think that's wonderful. And I think the one thing about AI is I think it also makes people hungrier for real human interaction. A little bit of a tangent. So I'm on TikTok a lot, like way too much. I don't make a lot of content on there, although I'm trying to get better, but I consume a lot. And there was this jazz band, I won't name them. It was intriguing to me. The visuals were intriguing, but I'm like, something felt off about it. And I did a little investigative work there, and I'm like, oh, this is AI music. And so it was just no longer intriguing to me. Like, I guess the quality of whatever they were doing was the same. But once I understood there's not a human doing it, I just have no interest. Whereas I recently found someone, I'm not going to forget their name, they're Taiwanese American who makes synth pop with a heavy trumpet focus. And I love trumpet. I played trumpet for a year in elementary school. It was horrible. Never practiced, but I still love the instrument. And so his stuff is very interesting to me, and I love his sound. But mostly I find I'm connecting with this guy as an artist because he's a human being out here making the synth pop instead of just, letting an algorithm do that. And so actually, I've lost clients before who wanted AI to replace me. I've had 2 of them come back and subsequently hire me in the year or so since that happened, because it turns out they just weren't getting what they wanted.
So you have 4 kids, as you mentioned, and in this kind of day and age where it's all changed so quickly, are you kind of worried about what jobs they might have, how they might manage the future, and then compared to kind of your kind of view when you were their age, do you think you had it harder, or do they have it harder?
I think they absolutely have it harder. I tell my kids all the time, like the job you're probably gonna have lots of jobs and lots of careers. I think that's the way the world is. I doubt you'll do the same thing your whole life, maybe. And I think probably the thing that you enjoy the most, or that you do most of your professional life, is a job that probably doesn't exist today. I think about like what I've done primarily most of my professional life didn't exist really when I was growing up. I mean, there were copywriters, right? But there were no content writers. I grew up before the internet, and not they weren't doing things in the way that I did them. And so I always worry about my kids. But I think I think hard skills are less important than kind of soft skills. I think you can always kind of learn. You can learn technology. It's easy to skill up in those ways. But I think what's harder to do is have the ability to have kind of self discipline to do work, have flexibility to adapt to things like that. And I think they all do a pretty good job of that. I am pretty convinced I don't really have great advice for them for how to live a career, because they are in a different world, I'm happy to talk to them about things today, but in terms of what they should study, or I have two kids in college, two in high school, and I just tell them, yeah, I mean, trust your gut, trust your intuition, and I don't think that they just don't. I don't think that you should do something that is soulless and you're going to hate every day of your life, because that's no way to live.
I think that's a lot more sobering advice, that saying like, uh, I don't know what the world will be like in 20 years. That's a lot more sobering than saying, oh, you should probably go into this because this and this will be important. It actually just makes it clear that, okay, it's meant to be hard. It's not meant to be you figure it out in 1 or 2 days. And kind of with that, um, a lot of artists will like want to make full-time income from their art, but maybe, well, most of them will not probably. Um, and maybe it's because they give up too early. My idea is, or maybe they don't put enough effort because they think it's meant to be easy. Um, Now you're making more than half your income from your art, and then the other half from your day job, per se. Um, did you expect it at all to be easy? And then were there any moments where it was actually easy?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I don't know that I had any expectations. I really resisted the idea that I was an artist for a long time. Kind of like you talked about, artist to me was kind of visual art, I guess, primarily. Although I'm an illustrator now, I wasn't. That's a relatively recent development. And it wasn't until I read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron that I began to conceive of myself like, oh, this writing thing that I do, that is an art. I'm an artist. And once I was able to accept that, that did make it easier, I think, to be like, oh, well, let me try this. I think the fact that I came as a marketer first, maybe, then to artist second, makes it a little bit easier, because I think one of the reasons that artists really struggle to make an income is I don't think they put enough thought into the wrapper or the container that you put your art in. If I was just to go out into the world and be like, I'm a haiku poet, that'll mean something to some people, but probably not enough people to enable me to make a living. Right. So what I really try and present myself is someone who's really interested in using haiku as a vehicle for living a deeply deeply human life. And that, I think, has like enabled me to connect with more people. And I used my poetry, especially my poetry comics, really as kind of illustrations within my essays. And the essays are, people understand that. That's a form people understand, and they can come to my poetry through those essays and things like that, but it's just less intimidating to them. And so I think that I don't think any of it's been particularly easy in the sense that I really haven't gone super viral or anything like that. But accepting myself as an artist has made life feel easier. It is, I feel less, I guess, angst or pressure and things like that, because I feel I'm more aligned with whatever I've got inside of me. But to your point, I think that statistically, that's not great in terms of artists' ability to make a full-time income, but I do think it's really possible. I do think you have to be creative and you have to be open to putting your art kind of in different wrappers or containers. And I also don't think there's really anything wrong with being an artist who doesn't make a full-time income. I don't think it makes you less of an artist. And I know people who are like musicians. They love making music. They love a particular style of music, and they have developed and they live lives. So they have jobs that don't eat away their whole time and soul, and so they still have plenty of time to make that art. And they're happy in that life. And so yeah, I think it's got to finding the right balance. But I think the mistake people make is deciding, oh, I have to make whatever. I need to make $200,000 a year, or I have to make some amount of money to be happy. I just don't think that's it. You need to have some level of income to pay your bills, to buy comfortable things. But I think what's more important is, do you have room for art in your life?
I think the money goal is so much easier to quantify and say, I want to make this much. It's easier to say that this is meant to be my goal. But that's kind of like a finite game where you get the money and then that's it. But also it's kind of infinite because you also want more. Then with art, it's about creating art. I have this kind of toxic, well, not toxic, but some people may call it toxic, that relationship with poetry that I'm always chasing the next poem. But I have that when I'm writing a poem and I write this just one great stanza where it just flows perfectly, and I know like this particular reader will definitely find this, will laugh to themselves. Like I'm always trying to have people laugh during reading. Like it's meant to be profound, but also have just that bit of humor in it. It's like that's kind of that moment where I just want to keep on doing that. So some people may think, oh, that's very toxic of like just chasing the next thing, but also people will do that with money a lot of the time. So I think it's a lot more pro-social to be chasing a poem than a bit of extra money.
Yeah, poetry. I mean, poetry. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like a drug, but instead of destroying society, I think it's at least making you better as a human, and hopefully giving some joy to whoever's reading it. And yeah, I think it's definitely a lot less toxic. And yeah, I think that's what the best art is: changing you from the inside, and maybe changing your corner of the world.
And would you say like the art is very, very central to your identity? Because for me, I explain it to people in a way that it makes them uncomfortable because the way I process the world, the way I see the world, like the only way I can get my mind to shut up for a bit is poetry, like just physically write a poem and then maybe rowing on the water, which I do for a sport. And that's the only time my mind like physically shuts up and I can just concentrate on one thing. It's just another reason why I like to just write poems because it's a way for me to calm me down. And sometimes it has led to problems in the past where I'd write a poem while I was around people, and some people might be made uncomfortable by that. And I understand their point, but then it's also I'd regret not writing a poem in that moment. So it's kind of hard to find that balance of like how central is this to my identity? Has that caused problems for you?
Yeah, I mean, people it does makes people uncomfortable for sure, right? If you identify yourself as an artist or a poet, that seems to really especially be triggering to people. And that I would say it's really. Remember the first time I really thought of myself as a poet in public. I went to actually someone through Substack that I know that lives up in Portland, not too far from me. She had Sue Clancy. She's a tremendously talented visual artist, she had a gallery showing, and so I went there. It's the first time I met her live and in person, and I met a few other Substackers there. And she was introducing me to the other people at that activity as a poet. And I've never been brave enough to do that myself. Okay. And so she's telling other people that I'm a poet, and you could see it on people's faces. Some people are like, oh, that's really cool. That's neat. I would say most people had kind of a neutral expression, but there definitely people are like, okay, great. This guy's off his rocker or a bum or whatever, you know? But to me, it was a really freeing experience. I'm like, oh, I can be, I really am a poet. People are going to take that however they do. And so I'm much more comfortable self-identifying that. In terms of internally my identity, like what you're talking about, like sometimes I have to write this poem. I have to get this out, and I got to put a stop to everything. And yeah, sometimes it really does make people uncomfortable. Like, what are you doing? You should be with us. You should be in the moment. And I'm really a big mindfulness person. I think haiku is a route for me personally to get mindfulness. I think it's actually something, poems in general, better than any self-help, I think, for people, right? But I'm like, yeah, I am in the moment right now. I would rather write a poem about something sometimes and take a picture, and that's weird, or at least scribble something down, and I can form into a better poem later. But I think maybe part of being a poet and part of being an artist is living kind of a ski wampus to the rest of the world. You just see the world differently. I think you experience it differently.
Yeah, exactly. And that metaphor of taking a picture, like that is my version of taking a picture, especially. And it's kind of hard for some people to understand, but that's kind of part of living life. And as an artist, you have to make kind of people feel uncomfortable. If you wrote solely to make people feel comfortable, it's kind of a bit. No, it doesn't mean it's not art, but a lot of art is good because it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you could write listicles all day, right? And that's a thing you could do, but that's not. I don't think that's the same as being like, oh, this is the weird way I see this world right now, and I've just got to put it down. It's like it really is. I think it's like a compulsion. I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me deep down.
The way poets see the world, it's the way people already see the world. But I think that once you bring it out in a poem, it becomes so evident that, oh yeah, this is kind of one of the ways the world is seen, and the right people will identify with that. And then if they're made to think, the other people that don't see the world that way and then read it, think, oh, someone else sees the world differently to me. And then that'll make them think, and then slightly make them feel uncomfortable, maybe make them grow as a person. And then kind of relate to haiku for mindfulness. I had an idea recently because on LinkedIn I follow a matcha brand that's quite big in the UK, Perfect Head, and I thought of matcha Japan haiku. I thought that there's a big matcha craze at the moment in coffee shops and everywhere. I think that'd be a great avenue for maybe you to pitch your haikus to, because just the absolute visual aspect of your comics, I think, would draw in a lot of people into a product that uh, it's a different kind of wrapper, as you mentioned, to like package a product and kind of have people be more mindful of the stuff they consume. Um, I know, what do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's fantastic. I would love to be able to do that. I think that would be great. I would love the idea of haiku comic like around a cup or something like that. Would be a kind of a dream thing for me. I would love it. When I was first writing, I wrote pirate haiku. I think I published it in. I started working on it 2016. Not any idea that it was going to be anything. Just this, I had to get this stuff out. And so I published it after that book. I think it was 2019 before I actually published it, or something like that. 2018, I can't remember. But I experimented with it a little bit, calling myself a commercial poet. because to me, again, I just back that I think people just take poetry both too seriously and not seriously enough, right? I think people just put up too much of a pedestal. I'm like, yeah. And I thought, I really want to write like poetry that people, like you talk about, like, you just make people smile, people laugh at something that's just like, oh yeah, I guess see this aspect of it. And I think about like my favorite things growing up was reading these comic strips like Charlie Brown, Peanuts, and Calvin and Hobbes. And so comics are, especially in the United States, they're just our for kids thing for a lot of people. But I'm like, there's this real interesting mass appeal there, but there's really a lot deeper art in these comics. And so part of my thing with the haiku comics and where that kind of went was, is there a way I can make this haiku even more accessible to people by putting it in a comic strip, and so it's just less intimidating maybe to people. And because I'm addicted to making them now, I can't stop. But yeah, the idea of putting it on a wrapper for something like as cool as like matcha or something like that, I'm like, oh, I would love that. That's a really good idea.
I've been trying to figure out what that kind of thing for my poetry is, because I don't know. I do a lot of I recite my poetry on TikTok, and maybe sometimes it doesn't make as much sense when it's being read aloud because not that much of a narrative. It's more so, well, there is a narrative in it, but it's more so descriptive and then reflective. So sometimes I have to figure out how to balance that, saying it out loud and then having it be understood by an audience. So I'm still kind of at that point. And then kind of relate to that, since you do copywriting and content writing, and that has allowed you to take a lot of risks, I've like noticed that, oh, Jason makes a lot of changes to his newsletter, and I'm like really fascinated by it because I see, oh, he's changed something. It's like I've taken that really to heart that I should make those constant adjustments, because some people might think, oh, if I constantly change who I am on social media, then people will unfollow me because they don't know who I'll be about. But it's more so about I'm connected with you, the person, because A, I admire you, and B, I share a lot of your views. So, kind of, could you speak about how your day job part of your work has enabled you to take those risks?
Yeah, so I kind of like to think of the day job part as like a universal basic income that I can use. So I can, oh, I know this will get paid off, and now I can really kind of push the envelope on my art stuff. Because again, haiku comics, poetry in general, as you know, isn't like a universal thing. People are like, ah, yes, that's what I've been waiting for my whole time. I'm gonna put aside my Netflix, or I'm gonna stop listening to Taylor Swift so I can do that. And so I think that to me, my growth as an artist, that was a really important foundation. With my newsletter specifically, I think I've been doing it for 6 years, but I really think I'm just starting to understand what I want it to be and how it's most useful to my readers. I agree with you. I think people who are connected to me as a person, that's what they want. And they're going to follow me through all my weird things, my whatever, these changes that I do. I do lose a lot of subscribers every time I make a change. And I think I've learned to be just kind of comfortable with that. I read something on social media by a guy named Jason Chatfield recently. He was on Substack. He's he writes something called New York Cartoons. He's a Australian cartoonist who lives in New York. Much more talented artist than I am. But he talked about how he's made a lot of changes in his newsletter this past year. He focused on doing all the things that made him happy. He thought made readers happy, but they're not like best practice type things, right? So like he tries to do 2 or 3, but sometimes only 1 post a week. It's not always the same day of the week. And he has like, I don't know, 5 or 10 different formats of things that he's doing. And so I think somebody could say, oh, that's not consistent or whatever. But he's been able to get almost 500 paid subscribers this past year. And I think it's because he's just being more himself. And I've really taken that to heart as I've tried to make these changes. I'm like, what really is at the core of me and what I want to do? Because it's not that, especially Substack is not like a major part of my income yet, although I really want it to be. But I think part of it is I'm just like, oh, I was trying too hard in the past to do the so-called best practices that these newsletter gurus tell you. And it's just not for me. I I don't have the kind of life and I don't have the kind of head I can publish the exact same day every week. And I'm much nicer to myself and I produce, I think, better quality stuff if I don't tie myself with that particular constraint.
When I was listening to you, oftentimes I feel like my the stuff I put out is not of good quality, and I think the main reason why is I tie myself to these deadlines or these specific rules, where I'd say, oh, it has to look like this and this. Uh, but when I experiment, for example, I barely have the same angle in my TikToks any time I'm doing a video. It's always like, oh, if I experiment with this angle, or one time I put it on the bottom of the stairwell, and it looked very funny because it was me hanging over the stairwell looking at the camera. My head was small because the camera was far away, but that made me really enjoy that session. Then I could always test, oh, do people like this format more? Do they like this format more? I always try to incorporate that variety because if I'm not enjoying it, like nobody else will. The long term goal is to have put out something that I enjoy, like the newsletter right now. I enjoy that a lot. Analyzing my own poetry, analyzing poetry from other poets, like the post I did about your poems from your haiku book, sci-fi haiku. I've really enjoyed that because it was like putting me outside of my comfort zone because I had to translate the poems, but then also uh, it was really enjoyable because it was new, and I find it hard just have do the same thing over and over again. In the same way, I can do the same thing over and over again in a different way. Uh, like I know we both follow Andy J Pizza, not his actual name, for people that don't follow him, but he had that one episode about doing a run, where he said that he has to do the run slightly differently every time. He doesn't tie himself down to doing it the same way every single day, or some chores he does differently. And I don't know, maybe it's because the way my brain works. Not really sure the way my brain works, but I always identified with neurodivergent people. I know you've ADHD, he has ADHD, so sometimes I'm not really sure the way my brain works. It'd be maybe it's a good explanation. I haven't gotten a diagnosis yet, but maybe I will. When did you get diagnosed in life, actually?
I was in my early 40s. So, uh, fairly, I mean, I'm 49 right now. So like maybe 6 years ago.
Did it help a lot?
I explained, I guess, some things. Um, it made me feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm not lazy. And I'd already kind of, I mean, I think one of the real reasons that I am self-employed most essentially my whole adult life. And one of the reasons that being a lawyer was not a good fit for me is that I just really have a hard time forcing myself into somebody else's system. It just, my brain doesn't work like that. And so when I understood that about myself, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not just like some guy who's contrary for the sake of being contrary. Just my brain, literally, the chemistry of it is atypical. And so, I mean, that was helpful in that way, helped explain kind of things for that. And I guess it's helpful in the sense that it gives me, I feel like I'm able to give myself more permission to be like, I need to build my life in a way that allows me to thrive, as opposed to try and force myself to live a way that other people, the quote unquote normal people, whatever that means, can function.
Yeah, I really hope that if I do get a diagnosis, it would help clarify those things. Because the way I explain it to myself now, it does help a lot to think, but then also there's that part of me of, oh, I'm probably just faking stuff. But I guess I have to kind of get over that thought and probably do something about it and kind of return to haiku again. And why do you think that haiku specifically has such a advantage over other poetry forms or other art forms in mindfulness specifically and regulating your emotions.
Yeah, I think it's three things. I think the first one is that because it's a simple format that everybody understands, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. And so I think that's part of it. I think the second part of it is there's actually, I think, a real physical nature to writing haiku because you have to count the syllables. I don't know anybody really that, I mean, I've been doing it a long time, but even I still count the syllables. I'll do the method where like I'll clap or I'll tap my hand. My favorite thing is actually I put my hand here, and in English, a syllable will be when your chin touches your hand.
Mhm.
So some words that have like complicated diphthongs, like fire, depending on the dialect, may sound like a 2 syllable word, but fire is just a 1 syllable word. So I actually think that physicality helps because it's bringing your mind and your body into the same place. So the structure, the kind of weird physical nature of it, and then the third reason is the constraints of a really short poem. Somehow, I think broadens your creativity in your mind. I did an experiment just last night. You saw it on Notes, Substack's kind of social media thing, where I did wrote first 2 lines of a haiku and asked everybody to come up with their own third line. And I'm still getting responses, and I love how the variety that people come, and just that changing that 1/3 line really takes the poem in so many different directions. It really just takes over that poem. And so I think that's what allows haiku to be such a great mindfulness tool. Is it has constraint that broadens your creativity, has a physical nature, but it's simple. And so I think some of those three things work together. There's a haiku poet named Clark Strand, who used to be a Buddhist monk, who writes a lot. He's really he's much stricter haiku person than I am, but in terms of all the rules and whatnot. But he's kind of one that first kind of turned me on to this idea of haiku might really be a route to mindfulness, and uh, and I've just kind of run with it.
That physicality aspect, because if people don't know, you should definitely become a paid subscriber of Weirdo Poetry because you'll be sending out postcards soon. I was really taken aback by that because I'm guessing logistically it costs a lot. But it was just a great way to kind of create community and create a kind of shared feeling. Another Substack I follow, Vitold Bridal. He also sends out mail art that he does, and I have it somewhere in the back of my room there, hung up on the wall. That was like, I think that was a great idea because it just, yes, it incentivizes people to, become a paid subscriber and get all the other benefits and just kind of feel more connected to you. But then it also is just that physical aspect of knowing, oh, I'm in a club with all of these people that have these postcards, uh, the comic postcards, and that's absolutely great. And how'd you, when that idea come to you?
I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've really wanted to do something physical because, like you say, we exist in this digital world, and I really want to do something physical for the people that subscribe to me. I think it's fun for me. At least I like to get mail. I like to send mail. But yeah, the cost thing I was really worried about. I really want to do like a zine. And there's some people that send really complicated things on Substack, and I could never make the cost work for me because I can't afford for Substack to run at a loss, right? But that same token, I eventually found out. I have a big enough readership now that I can get the cost of the printing of postcards to be pretty low, and then sending a postcard even internationally is not very expensive. So I don't think I could afford to do it every month. But I wanted it more than once a year. So I hit on seasonal because Haiku also has that seasonal aspect to it. And so it just felt like it fit kind of the vibe of the what I do, but also really allowed me to be generous in a way that is important to me. And again, like I think it's really fun. So
I think having it less frequently is actually a lot better because it makes it feel more like a gift and not, let's say, like a subscription sometimes, so it's kind of like you're waiting for that 3 months to like, oh, I know about this time I'll get a gift from Jason. It's like, oh, I can't wait, and then it kind of keeps you in that kind of waiting, and then creates that sense of community. And kind of relate to community. Uh, I guess it's more so pronounced in America at the moment, but I guess there's that political divide, and then there's also a lot of loneliness. There's a loneliness epidemic. Kind of, when do you think it got a lot worse in a way, where there was that sudden moment of uh, you cross the line and it's just everyone feels lonely?
Hmm. I maybe sound like an old man here, but I really think social media has been engineered to make us lonely, to silo us into these different areas of political views and all that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be that way, but I think that structurally, that's what a lot of the social media platforms are really engineered to do. And I think, I mean, that's another reason I like the physical aspect of those postcards, to kind of break free from that. I'm like an introverted person. I think kind of mostly always been like that. Not that I don't like talking to people, but it is generally draining for me. But by the same token, it can be lone. I mean, being a poet that writes primarily online can be a pretty lonely existence. And so I'm a little suspicious of the idea of a loneliness epidemic, in that I do think we all still have free will and free choice. And I think maybe we pathologize things a little bit too much. And it's like, oh, well, I'm lonely not because of my own choices, but because I'm whatever society made this way, right? And I think like I work at the library, or my community library, a lot because I just like to be out of the house. I see people. It makes my art better. I interact with people. I hear conversations. And so the other day I was sitting in a chair. I was getting ready to get up, and this woman came and sat in a chair by me, and she sat in the chair and she just sighed, like the most contented sigh I'd ever heard. Just like, ah. And in that moment, I could have just smiled to myself or chuckled, but I want to interact with this other human being, and I said, "Oh yeah, these chairs really are the best, aren't they?" And she just smiled. She said, "Oh yeah, they're so great." And she's like, "Oh, the weather's great right now. The rain has finally stopped. So if you're leaving, this is a great time." And it was just, I mean, just two people having a conversation, right? But I like to think, at least in some way, that made me feel a little bit less lonely. And I hopefully maybe made her feel a little less lonely. Probably we'll never see each other again. But I just think we need to actually talk to people. We need to be willing to talk to strangers, have just even small conversations like that, if we're really serious about bridging some of these ideological differences and also the loneliness, because it's really easy to hate somebody that you never talk to.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people will expect that I won't be lonely if I have a lot of friends, but then you won't always be with your friends all the time, especially when you get a bit older. And so then you'll be walking down the street, and then you won't talk to anybody having headphones stuck in your head, in your ears, and not talking. I think that really gets at what it is, a loneliness epidemic, because we're not making those tiny little choices. And that's kind of what I try to bring out in my poetry, is those tiny little moments that I notice. Sometimes I won't talk to the people, but I'll notice those things. And then through a poem, I'll be able to show people that, yes, you can talk to people. There's still those tiny moments of joy of strangers interacting. And it just kind of really reduced that loneliness for me, especially now, because at the moment kind of have to work on myself. Because I've hurt most of my friends about a month ago, and now I'm quite lonely in that sense, that I don't have those friends. I'm working on it now, but it took too long to change. I do kind of deserve in that way, that I took too long to change, so I understand their choices. But those kind of little moments where I'm cycling on my bike and I find something that just does make me remind that, oh yeah, I deserve happiness, that there is still some joy left for me. Or like, I work with kids as a teacher in my Polish school, and then there's also that moment of like, I walk into the classroom and then, oh, I can't be sad. Like, I see all of them all happy. Like, for example, we were doing like codes, and one of them was like Morse code, and a lot of them would just write Mr. Carl in Morse code, and then like I'd have to uncode it, and it's like, oh, like that just makes you happy and just reminds you that, oh yeah, I'm actually not that lonely. I can get through this. That was kind of really sobering thought. That what you said, that it's we do have free will. We don't have to be lonely. We just have to make those tiny choices every day.
Yeah. I think I have this kind of going back to income. We talked about that earlier too. I think kind of my general, try to have an abundance outlook on things. And I do think that there's always more money to be made if that's something that you need, right? And I think that friendship is also a thing. There's always more friends to be made. I definitely went through a similar period in my life where I felt really lonely. I felt like I didn't have any friends, and the friends that I did have, I kind of isolated myself from them because of mental health issues. And but eventually, I had to realize that even if those friendships may never be the same again, again, I do have my free will. I can. It's possible to form new friendships, and I'm really excited this week. Tomorrow, I'm going to go see some people I've never met before, who I've only met online, some who I've collaborated with, and some new friends that I'll be meeting for the first time in real world. But I feel like we're already have a friendship. Just like I feel like even you, this is the first time we've seen each other's faces dynamically through video like this. But that we still have these connections.
Yeah, I was really excited to do like this podcast with you because I was like, oh, I haven't talked physically or like through video to any of the people I read, and sometimes it can be like there's so much to read on the internet that you sometimes feel, oh, I really enjoyed this, and then you forget to kind of respond with a comment or something that to tell the person I really valued this, because I know myself that, let's say, all the likes I'd get on a video on TikTok, those don't mean that much to me. But once I get that comment, it's like has astronomical value that just someone like took the time, and it's like someone coming up to you on the street saying, "Oh, I like the way you dress." Like it's that kind of equivalent. But then it's also like it's very nice thing about that. So many people didn't say, "Oh, I like this," and it kind of makes me remind myself that people do like what I write. Sometimes they don't know how to express it, and it feels easier to say I liked it and then just leave a like rather than saying something.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, comments really are can be a really amazing way. That's one thing I do like about Substack as a platform. I feel like the people generally, at least people that leave me comments are really generally pretty really positive and affirming. I think that's really a great thing there.
I really just want to figure out how to kind of turn those uh, online friendships into physical ones. I definitely will have to visit America at some point, even though for like many years I said, "Oh no, I'll never visit America. It's too dangerous or too politically divided." And then I realized that, oh, there's a lot of great people in America. Like, what am I saying? It's not that bad. Like Europeans would think America is so far away. They'll think it's so different from us, but maybe it's not that different. What do you think kind of the differences between Europeans and Americans are, but then what's kind of the things in common?
Yeah, I mean, I think our just general humanity unites us all people all over the world. I think Americans, I think we generally really like to think of ourselves as separate, and I think we spend a lot of time and effort on our individual and maybe even political lives trying to do that. But I think we're really more in common than separate. A lot of the things we think of as really American staples predominantly come from Europe, and really trace their history to Europe. I've lived in Asia. I've been to Asia quite a bit. I've never been to Europe yet, although I really plan on doing that in the coming years. But I think it's easier to disregard other people by saying, "Oh, we're so different," and not look for all the underlying kind of just the common humanity stuff, I guess. Yeah, but Americans, we do think of ourselves as separate from Europe, I think, in weird ways, in pretty insulting ways, I think. So,
I think Europeans don't help that either. That they also have that mindset. Oh, we're so different. We work less. We do this and this. I think that's kind of also contributing to the problem of just divide, uh, especially in politics. I remember uh, on the night like Trump got elected, I was in the gym and then I see, oh, it's definite he's won. I had my first panic attack. I think that's what I had, and then now a few months have passed. Like my main reason for worrying was that there'd be a war in Poland, and I was really worried that I'd have to. Not that if a war broke out, I would join the army in Poland, even though I live in Ireland, and um, just kind of I'd do that, but I was worried that it would happen. Luckily, it hasn't happened yet, and I hope it won't happen ever. I was kind of I'm really happy that it wasn't as bad. It's not as bad as in reality as I thought it would be that kind of night that a year ago.
yeah, as an American, I mean, Trump is not my favorite human being. And it's pretty scary, I think, at times. This is the kind of the most, I guess, politically scared I've been in my life. I'm a pretty privileged person due to my skin color, my background. I'm fairly privileged in a lot of ways, but this is an autocracy I feel like we live in. One thing I am grateful for is I feel like while a lot of Americans are pushing back against some of the horrible things that are being tried, I find comfort in how many Europeans are also pushing back vocally, and not just leaders of European countries, but regular human beings, and it gives me greater comfort as a citizen here to be like, yes, we're not alone, and we're not crazy. This is not good.
And I think I remember you wrote a post, maybe well, it didn't directly reference Trump, but it was about the kind of political uncertainty and then political fear. I think you really handled that well because when I read that in that moment, it felt like, oh, I have somebody to connect to. I can talk about these things to somebody that I'm not alone, and that kind of just really, I've always really admired that about your work. That when things get tough, you always have not a wishy-washy perspective, but it's always like really sobering and comforting in the way that the truth can be comforting when you actually hear, let's say you're going through grief and somebody tells you, "I hope you're okay." That doesn't really comfort you. Uh, Somebody saying to you, "Oh, don't worry, it's meant to hurt," and that's kind of comforting in that way. I was really admired that about your work, that you can keep a cool head in that way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think one influence for me is one of the things I studied I speak fluent Mandarin Chinese. It's not as fluent as it used to be, but one of the things I did study in college was Chinese literature. And one thing I really admired about a lot of the ancient Chinese poets, especially in times of real social turmoil and civil war and things, is they would have this way of writing poems that were critical of power, but have this plausible deniability that it's about chrysanthemums or something like that. And I think about that a lot. And I think sometimes, I think there's some usefulness being very explicit about whatever you're protesting. But I think there's also a lot of value in trying to be more subtle, take a longer view, but not knuckling under to the oppressors. So I appreciate you saying that, because that is definitely something I consciously do try to think about, ways that I can express what I hope is comfort, but not like toxic positivity, because I think things are tough and hard, but I think there is hope through that.
Remember another one of your essays that kind of relates to this is where you talked about having like little pockets of joy in the world, and that kind of comes through poetry, but also just the way you carry yourself about in the world. Do you think some people focus on these big moments of joy kind of in the world sometimes too much, and then it kind of just pushes them back further and makes them a lot more sad?
Yeah, I think some people try and use happiness. I think there's kind of a distinction between happiness and joy. I think happiness is fleeting and ephemeral, and joy is something you can just take with you as a more feeling of general contentment. I think some people focus way too much on happiness as a way of escaping the reality of what's going on in their life instead of. I think the joy comes from dealing with the hard stuff and accepting it to some degree or another. And so, yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right. It's easy to look for the dopamine hit almost, right? Of happiness, of like, I'll go on this roller coaster and that's going to make everything better. But then at the end of the day, that can never last. You still have to go back to your real life, your daily life. And I think joy in life is finding somehow to find the little pockets of every day. And I'm convinced everybody, no matter what you're going through, there's little pockets of peace or joy, if you will, that can happen every day if you're open to seeing them.
Like a few weeks ago, I finally realized that I do have to be kind to myself to get through this hard stuff now. Because if I just treat myself badly, it'll just make it worse. So I went to a bookstore and just start browsing the poetry section, and I got a book from Mary Oliver, A Thousand Mornings, and that really uh, that's a really great just collection of poetry, especially the one about the fox, or there's another one. I think it's the first one in the book. I don't remember its name, but I've been just making notes on how she writes, and that kind of reminds me of those little pockets of joy. Just her finding those joyful moments that, uh, like, they don't happen to everybody, but in actuality, they do.
I love Mary Oliver so much. Yeah, I think one of her superpower as a poet is to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. I mean, maybe it's what I guess all of us are striving to do, but she's really just, to me, I think all the time, like, well, yeah, I see I see a great blue heron. It's a very pretty bird, right? But Mary Oliver can take that same scene that I may have seen, just thought that's nice, and construct this whole beautiful narrative poem all about it. And yeah, it just makes you feel like, oh, but there's magic in her life. There, to me at least, makes me like there's got to be magic in my life. I've got to be open to seeing it, to slow down.
Kind of, it's not all about joy in life, but it's also learning how to deal with the negative emotions. Before kind of haiku, did you have any other coping strategies, or do you have any other coping strategies to kind of deal with anger or negative emotions? Because I'm struggling with that a lot at the moment.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's something. I used to be a much angrier person. I grew up with a father that had a very strong temper, violent temper. And so I think I carried a lot of that into my adulthood. Part of it is just really consciously choosing, okay, I do not want to be an angry person, and having to can make that choice a lot until I was able to actually develop the habit of, I guess it's kind of difficult for me to articulate, but really had to consciously develop the habit of, I'm just not going to get angry about stuff in terms of, I can still be, still be upsetting and things like that, but not like yelling, screaming, kind of that toxic anger cycle. So part of it is just like choosing again and again, recognizing, hey, I am heading down this path. Okay, I'm going to breathe and not do that. A habit that I have that is very helpful to me is I take really long walks pretty much every day. And I think just the combination of the physicalness of that, and just being able to, for me, like the first part of my walk, the first, whatever, 15, 20 minutes is always, my mind is going crazy. And just all these things spinning. But if I walk long enough, I can always outwalk that craziness and can kind of find a little peaceful rhythm that I think it resets my whole nervous system. That's how it feels. I'm not really a biology expert in that way, but to me, I think making just the decision, this is how I want to be, and then taking walks, the two of the biggest things. And I think a third thing is being quick to apologize and quick to forgive myself, quick to forgive others, and just quick to apologize when I realize I may have been out of line in one way or another.
And on another note, because I think you've made it, was there any specific moment where you felt you made it as an artist, and after that, did life feel like a return to baseline?
Yeah, I had a lot of little moments where I felt like, oh, I'm making progress. Um, I I'm at the point where I don't think I believe that there's a making it anywhere, because there's always new mountains to climb. I guess that kind of an idea, but I do remember fairly recently. I got the largest amount I've ever gotten from Medium, where I write pretty regularly, and had a post go semi-viral there. And I thought it wasn't necessarily a life-changing amount, but it was nice. But it was an amount that made me think, oh, this is the result of I've actually really connecting with people, and it actually has helped my other efforts too, because I'm like, oh, there is value. I have found a platform where there are strangers on the internet, tens of thousands of people are reading my stuff every month, and that's a big deal. And I allowed myself to feel like, oh, this is a big deal. And so the danger of that is, maybe you want to keep chasing that, and I think that in a way that's kind of unsustainable. Although my stats, went down, but they're still much higher than they had ever been. I think I've reached a new plateau there on that platform. What was more important for my art, though, is I was like, oh, so in other places where I'm not having quite the success, it's not because I suck. It's just because I haven't found the right alchemy yet to connect with the people. And so maybe, oh, I'm more curious now what I can do to connect with people, as opposed to maybe I suck. Maybe I'm horrible.
What do you think in these past 12, 13 years, what do you think that alchemy was that made you stand out and kind of build an audience?
I think part of it is just being too stubborn to quit, just to keep making things and trying new things, experiment new things. I think that's really super important. I just have never quit. I've never stopped putting myself out there. I think that's the big thing. I do think that showing up consistently over really, really long periods of time, it makes me I'm a much better writer now than I was 13 years ago. Certainly a much better poet now than I was when I really got serious about poetry about 6 years ago. So I think that long, consistent. I don't really like using that word, because it's not necessarily a daily thing, but it is over and over and over again, showing up, showing up, showing up, and not getting too caught up in things not working, but also being open to, I want to try new things. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I think the second part of it is just being more focused on, I am curious about other people, as opposed to, I've just got to make myself happy. I don't know if that makes sense. I think it's really just a curiosity about other people that has really opened it up. And I guess really to that, also accepting the fact that maybe I have something useful to say that can be helpful, which isn't a thing I've always felt in my life. That combination, just really long-term things, being curious, and then being open to that I can be helpful.
I'm happy to hear that because I feel that I try to implement those things. I never understood, for example, on LinkedIn, I know it's, let's say somebody gets a new job or they share an interesting post and people just say, oh, congrats, or you just see those AI comments. But that curiosity, I always try to comment with curiosity. I think that's just really pivotal because if you're not curious about other people, how are you meant to get material, let's say for yourself? Because the material, most of the time, it doesn't come well, it does come from within you, but I think for my poetry specifically, and then I guess poetry in general, uh, it comes from those outside moments where most of my poetry I've found just follows a format. First stanza is usually just like a description, and then that somehow leads on to an unexpected metaphor, which leads on to a reflection about the way I see the world or a random memory, and then I have a new thought. And then once I put that into a poem, then I'm a lot more curious about that place because whenever I pass that place, I'll have that thought, oh, this is what I thought when I saw this place. And then that kind of helps it integrate into my thought process, especially with poetry, because the other types of writing I do, maybe when I journal and I do that in French, so maybe that's kind of a problem that I don't do in my native language. It doesn't feel like it gets integrated into my thought process as quickly. But with poetry, it really helps just with staying curious and noticing the things about myself that help me get better as a person later on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And so we have this tradition on the podcast that I started. It's called Strange Advice, where the previous guest gets advice on a problem from the next guest. So my last guest was Simon. He's a friend of mine from my poetry school, and unfortunately, he hasn't replied to me with his problem. But I think when setting up the episode and kind of talking to him, I saw that he's very keen on being professional, and I get that. But kind of just professional for employers maybe seem that way. But as someone that is self-employed, how would you maintain being yourself while also still being professional for your clients? Because you work with attorneys for your client work.
To me, being professional is the same thing as being respectful. So to me, that means I do what I say I'm going to do, and yeah, I think the biggest pitfalls people have in the works. I mean, I've had the opportunity to employ people and all kinds of things. I think the biggest professional mistakes people make in the workplace is consistently just over promising things that are just impossible for them to do. To complete on time or whatever. I think so. Really, part of being professional is accepting that you are a finite human being and just don't promise you're going to be able to do more than what you can possibly do, and then just do what you're going to do, and then communicate if there's always going to be gaps. Communicate as quickly as possible. Oh, I'm going to miss this deadline, and then just don't miss it again. But in terms of being yourself, I think that's really. I think people think that people don't want them to be themselves, and I think that's also a mistake. I think the people you work with want you to be yourself. They really want to know who you are, even if that person is goofy or you've got some weird obsession with K-pop demon hunters or you've got some strange hobbies. I think actually bringing that in is professional. And it enables you to show up more as yourself. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but I think the way to be professional is really try and find out how you can be as true to yourself as possible. I don't think you should have like a work self and a home self. I don't think it's healthy, and I think that they bleed in together. But what separates you from being a professional in any field is just completing what you said you're going to complete when you said you were going to do it.
Yeah, that part about not having the working at home self. When I first lost friends a few years ago, and it was cause we didn't gel with each other, and I thought we did, but we didn't actually. Once I got through that, and then I realized who I was, just not having uh separate selves for different people, be it for work, be it for school, be it for home. That really helps me being happier, and then also it makes it more efficient because you don't have to. Your mind doesn't have to switch. So actually, it's more respectful to be yourself. And I really wanted to thank you for coming on here because when I got this job, I really wanted to interview you because I've always admired your work. Just really grateful for all the insights you've given me, and just the fact that I feel you're a mentor of sorts to me when I read your stuff, not just in the poetry side and how to kind of make that a job, but also just on a personal level. So really thank you for the time you've spent talking to me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to meet with you in person. I really admire you as a poet, even though your primary language, your primary poetry language is different than mine. I enjoy the translated versions of that I'm able to do, the Google Translate versions. But I think you're a phenomenal poet. And yeah, thank you. This is a lot of fun, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks very much. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks.